I've taken dozens of long solo road trips, but nothing prepared me for the night a stranger decided to shadow my car for more than 100 miles. I was driving from Phoenix to Albuquerque, a route I had done countless times before. It was November, the kind of cold, dry night where the desert air feels like it's whispering across the road. I left around 11 p.m. because I liked empty highways, fewer cars, fewer distractions, and a chance to clear my mind after a long week. About an hour into the drive, everything felt peacefully routine. My phone was connected to the car speakers, playing a mix of soft rock and old road trip playlists. My headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the darkness, and beyond that, there was nothing but the empty desert. I remembered thinking, this is going to be one of those easy, relaxing drives. I couldn't have been more wrong. Around midnight, while passing a long stretch near Holbrook, I noticed headlights appear in my rearview mirror. Nothing unusual, just a car catching up, but it didn't pass me. Not for the first mile, not for the next 10 at first. Brushed it off. Maybe the driver was cautious. Maybe they didn't want to speed. But the longer the car stayed glued to my bumper, the more uneasy I felt. I tapped my brakes lightly, signal that they were following too close. The car responded by backing up for just a second, then moved right back into the same distance, matching my speed exactly. Okay? Weird, I muttered out loud. I changed lanes. The car changed lanes. I slowed down. They slowed down. I sped up. They sped up. That went on like this for nearly 20 minutes. The uncomfortable feeling in my stomach settled into something heavier, a kind of instinctive dread I couldn't ignore. I decided to pull off at the next gas station. If the car followed me off the exit, then I'd know for sure something was wrong. When the sign for a rest stop appeared, I flipped on my turn signal. The car behind me did the exact same thing. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. The exit curved into a dimly lit parking lot with 2 vending machines and 3 gas pumps, but no actual gas station building. Only one fluorescent light flickered over the pavement. I parked under it. The car drove past me, slowly, then circled the lot. A full, slow circle, like it was scanning. I locked my doors. The car parked across the lot, facing me. Not in a parking spot, just sitting there with its headlights on, staring. I debated my next move. I didn't want to get out. I didn't want to confront them. So I pretended to be on my phone, pretending someone was waiting for me. A minute passed, then another, then another. Finally, I put the car back in drive. When I pulled out, the other car flicked on its turn signal. Following, my heart dropped. As soon as I got back on the interstate, I floored it. The speed limit was 75, but I pushed past 90, then 95. For a moment, I thought I lost them. Then the headlights reappeared, closer, faster. They were now tailing me harder than before. Why? What do you want? I whispered to myself, pulse pounding. I considered calling 911, but something in my gut hesitated. I didn't want to sound dramatic if it turned out to be some paranoid misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew this wasn't normal. I turned off the music so I could think. The only sound left was my engine and the occasional gust of desert wind hitting the car. Then I saw the sign. I didn't hesitate. I switched lanes instantly. The car behind me didn't. Instead, it slammed on the brakes. It didn't follow me off the exit. It practically fled. I pulled into the trooper station parking lot just to be safe, letting my shaking hands rest on the wheel. For a moment, I thought it was over. I even laughed nervously, feeling stupid for overreacting. But 20 minutes later, when I got back on the highway, something felt off. The darkness seemed heavier. The road felt emptier, and couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Around 2:30 a.m., I approached the long stretch of desert highway with no towns for miles. The only light was from my headlights sweeping across rocks and dry brush. Then I saw it, the same car, up ahead this time, parked on the shoulder with its hazards blinking. I recognized the dent in the rear bumper. the square shape of its taillights, the dusty back window. It was the car. My blood ran cold as I approached. The hazards clicked off. The reverse lights flashed. Then, impossibly fast, the car pulled back onto the road and positioned itself behind me again. I felt my whole body go tense. Not again. Please, not again. This time, it didn't follow from afar. They drove so close, I couldn't even see their headlights. Just a white glare consuming my rear window. I changed lanes. They changed lanes immediately. I slowed. They slowed. I sped up. They sped up. It was like driving with a predator on my tail. My breathing became shallow. Every part of my brain screamed that I needed to get away. Up ahead, I saw a sign for an unpaved service road, rarely used, barely lit. Not a safe bet. But I didn't have choices left. I signaled at the very last second and swerved. Off. The other car overshot the exit. For a second. Just a second. I thought I'd tricked them. Then their brake lights lit up. The car screeched to a stop on the shoulder. It reversed. Fast. I turned onto the dirt road and killed my headlights. Dust flew everywhere. The smell of dry earth filling my car. I drove blind for a moment, relying only on moonlight. Then, I turned behind a rocky slope and waited. I held my breath. Seconds passed. Then I heard it. The low hum of an engine slow, searching. Their headlights swept across the dirt road like a pair of hunting eyes. I sank lower in my seat. The lights, passed then, returned. They were scanning the area, hunting, looking for me. My heart hammered so loudly I thought they'd hear it. After the longest minute of my life, the headlights drifted away. The sound of the engine faded until there was nothing left but the quiet hiss of desert wind. I stayed hidden for 10 more minutes, just to be safe. Then slowly, cautiously, I crept back onto the road, turned on my headlights, and rejoined the highway. At this point, dawn was maybe an hour away. The sky was a faint shade of purple when I finally crossed into New Mexico. That's when my nerves began to settle. The ordeal felt like it had to be over, but the road was quiet. Too quiet, almost unnaturally empty. I passed an old rest area, broken lights, cracked pavement, rusted picnic tables, and there it was. The car, parked sideways across the exit ramp, like it was waiting for me. Slammed on the brakes hard enough to skid. My car shook. My pulse spiked. The other car's driver door slowly opened. A figure stepped out, but I couldn't see their face in the low light. Just a silhouette, tall, still, standing, completely motionless, watching me. I couldn't breathe. I threw my car into reverse and backed up onto the interstate. Tires squealing. The figure didn't chase me. They just stood there, facing the road, head slightly tilted, as if memorizing me, or deciding something. When I was far enough, I hit the gas and didn't stop until I saw the sun rising over the mountains. I reached Albuquerque around 7 a.m. My hands shook so badly I had to sit in the parking lot of my hotel for 10 minutes before I could even think about going inside. I reported it later, giving every detail I could. They never found the car, never found the driver, never found anything. But sometimes, when I'm on a late night highway, I still catch myself checking the rearview mirror more often than I should, just making sure those headlights don't show up again. I was driving back home after visiting my brother in Colorado. It was one of those long, flat stretches between small towns where the sky feels larger than the world beneath it. It was early winter, the kind of night where the temperature drops fast after sunset and the cold starts creeping into your bones, even with the heater on. I left a little later than planned, around 9:30 p.m., but I didn't mind. I'd always been the type who enjoyed long night drives, quiet roads, a good audiobook, time alone to think. The highway was almost empty. Occasionally, a semi-truck would pass in the opposite lane, its lights washing across the darkness like a silent wave. But other than that, I was alone. Just me, the road, and the hum of the engine. About an hour into the drive, I saw something strange ahead. Not a car, not an animal, a person, a woman, walking on the shoulder in the freezing cold. At first, she was just a dark silhouette. Her figure cut against the pale glow of my headlight, slender, with long hair blowing across her face in the wind. She wasn't stumbling. She wasn't flagging me down. She wasn't even looking at traffic. She was just walking alone at almost midnight on a deserted highway. I slowed down instinctively, not because I planned to stop, but because my brain couldn't make sense of the scene. As I got closer, I realized she wasn't dressed for the weather. She wore a long gray sweater, thin leggings, and no jacket. Her clothes looked almost damp, clinging slightly to her arms and sides. My first thought was that she'd been in an accident. Maybe her car had broken down somewhere behind her. "Hey, you okay?" I said out loud. Even though she couldn't hear me, something in my chest tightened as I passed her. She didn't look up. She didn't react at all. Her head was tilted slightly downward, like she was staring at the ground right in front of her feet. The image stuck with me long after she disappeared in my rearview mirror. Something about her walk bothered me. It wasn't slow or limping. It was steady, deliberate, like she knew exactly where she was going but didn't want anyone else to know she knew. I drove another half-mile before guilt started twisting in my stomach. What if she really needed help? What if she was hurt? What if I had just driven past someone in real danger? I swallowed hard and checked my mirrors again. Darkness, empty road, no other cars. I argued with myself for a few seconds before finally turning on my blinker and pulling onto the shoulder. "Okay," I muttered, breath fogging the air. "Just check on her. That's all." I put the car in reverse. I reversed slowly, keeping to the shoulder. I didn't want to scare her, and I definitely didn't want to hit her. The brake lights cast a soft red glow across the pavement behind me. But the strange part, I kept reversing and never saw her. The shoulder stretched behind me, empty and silent. I frowned. There was no way she'd covered that much ground in such a short time. I'd barely driven half a mile past her. I shifted to drive and pulled forward again, checking between the highway reflectors. Still nothing. For a moment, I wondered if I had imagined her. Maybe the darkness and long drive were messing with my mind. But no, I knew what I'd seen. I turned the car around fully and drove slowly back the way I'd come. The empty road looked endless, flat and cold. Moonlight washed everything in a dull silver, making it even harder to see where the pavement ended and the desert began. Then I saw her again. This time, she wasn't on the shoulder. She was in the middle of the lane, standing perfectly still, facing me. My foot slammed on the brake hard enough to make the seatbelt dig into my chest. The car jerked to a stop a good 20 feet away from her. She didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't raise her arms or shield her eyes from the headlights. Just stood there, staring. The silence was overwhelming, like the entire highway was holding its breath. My fingers clenched the steering wheel. Hello?" I said out loud, as if speaking to myself would make the situation less terrifying. She didn't respond. Her face was pale, almost washed out by the cold light. Her hair hung in messy waves, partially covering one side of her face. Her sweater looked even more soaked than before, like she had walked through a river or melted snow. Something deep in my instincts whispered, "Do not get out. Do not open the door." I cracked the window down just an inch. "Ma'am, do you need help? Are you hurt?" Nothing, no movement, no blink, no sound, except the faint hiss of wind over the highway. "Okay," I whispered, forcing a breath down. "Something's wrong. That sentence came out instinctively, because every part of me felt it. I didn't want to get out of the car. So instead, I reached over, turned the passenger lock off, and leaned to push the door open just slightly. Cold air sucked into the car instantly, sharp and stinging. "Do you need a ride?" I called out. "It's freezing out there." She finally moved. Not her whole body, just her head. She tilted it slowly, like an animal hearing a distant sound. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, fragile, barely carried by the wind. "Can you take me home?" Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. Not scared, not relieved, not hopeful, just flat, emotionless, like she'd rehearsed that exact sentence 1,000 times. "Where do you live?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. She just stared. Then, up the road. Her tone was wrong. Everything was wrong, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Okay, get in." As she walked toward my car, I watched her carefully. Her steps were slow, but precise. No limp, no stumble, no sign of an injury. Whatever had happened to her, it wasn't physical. She opened the passenger door and sat down without looking at me. Her clothes were dripping slightly onto the floor, though the snow hadn't started yet. She stared straight ahead. Not at me, not at the windshield, just ahead. I swallowed thickly and put the car in drive. A cold dread settled into my stomach. We drove in silence for several minutes. I didn't know what to say. Her presence filled the car like a heavy fog quiet, still suffocating. Finally, I cleared my throat. "So, where am I going? Which exit?" She lifted her arm slowly and pointed toward the windshield. "Keep going. No specific direction. No instructions. Are you from around here?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She didn't answer. I glanced sideways at her. Her hair hid most of her face, but from what I could see, she wasn't shivering at all. Not even slightly. Despite her wet clothes and the freezing, every detail made my chest tighten more. 10 more minutes. Past that, then she said something that made the hair on my neck rise. "You almost didn't come back for me." Her voice was soft, but not grateful. It sounded like a statement, or a warning. I wasn't sure if you needed help," I said. "I didn't want to freak you out." She slowly turned her head toward me. Her eyes finally visible looked. "Wrong. Not dead. Not angry. Just empty. You should have kept driving," she whispered. My heart started pounding. "Why?" I asked, gripping the wheel. "Is someone chasing you? Are you in danger?" She blinked once, slowly, then turned back to the windshield. "Exit up there." My stomach dropped when I saw the sign. There was an exit, but it didn't have a name, just a worn, cracked blue sign that said it led into darkness. No lights, no houses, no towns, just a narrow road cutting into the desert. "I don't think this goes anywhere," I said cautiously. "It does," she replied. "Just take it." Everything inside me screamed no, but her voice, her calmness, her certainty. It felt like pressure on my chest. I slowed down at the exit. The car filled with silence. Then she whispered, "Please." That single word felt different, sadder, more human. Against every instinct, I turned onto the exit. The road was rough and uneven. Gravel pinged under my tires. My headlights cut through pitch darkness on both sides. "What exactly is out here?" I asked. "My home." "Do you live with family?" Silence. "You live alone?" More silence. I tried again. "How far is it?" No answer. She just lifted her arm again and pointed forward. The road narrowed. The gravel turned to dirt. I had to slow to a crawl. And then I saw lights. A single house. Small, old, wooden, barely standing. A porch light flickered weakly. The windows were dark. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. She lifted her hand toward the house. "Stop." I did. She didn't move. Is someone inside? I asked. She stared at the house quietly, then nodded once. My throat tightened. Do they know you're coming? Yes. Do you? Want me to walk you to the door? She turned her head toward me, and for the first time I saw real emotion in her face. Fear? Double quotes. No. It was sharp, immediate. Stay here. She opened the door slowly and stepped out. Wet footprints marked the dirt. She walked toward the house with that same steady, unnatural pace, but halfway across the yard, she stopped, then slowly turned back to me. Her voice drifted across the cold air. He's watching you. My heart stopped. I looked around, instinctively leapt. Right behind me. No one, nothing, just the empty, silent desert. I turned back to her. She was gone, vanished. The yard was empty. The house was dark. No door had opened. No footsteps, nothing. My brain scrambled for answers. Had she run? Hit me? Was I hallucinating? I threw the car into reverse so fast I almost hit the ditch as I backed out. My headlights swept across the windows of the old house, and in the second-story window, I saw a face, not hers, a tall silhouette, head tilted, staring at me, just watching. I don't remember driving away. I don't remember the next 10 miles. All I remember is the sound of my pulse banging in my ears and my hands shaking uncontrollably. I didn't stop until I reached a brightly lit gas station near the next town. I told an attendant what happened. His face went pale. That house burned. Wadi Siraj wasn't a place marked on any tourist map, tucked between two barren cliffs in the outskirts of Baluchistan. He was rarely visited and almost never mentioned in conversation. Those who lived nearby insisted there was nothing there, just dry wind, old rocks, and a few shrubs fighting for survival. But Armin had grown up hearing a different story. His grandfather used to whisper about the vanishing steps, carved into the side of a cliff long before any tribe settled nearby. Steps that seemed normal in daylight, but at night, under certain phases of the moon, they shifted. One moment they led upward toward the mountain crest. The next, they disappeared entirely, as though swallowed by the rock. Most people dismissed the tale as the rambling of an old shepherd, but Armand could never forget the way his grandfather's eyes shone when he spoke of them. Not fearful, almost reverent. And now, after years of planning, Armand was finally there, standing at the mouth of Wadi Siraj, under a hot, dusty sun. He wasn't alone. Sarah, a diligent anthropology student, held her camera tightly while scanning the cliffs. Beside her, Kamran, an eager but anxious cousin, dragged his backpack across the ground. This place feels dead, Kamran muttered. Like nothing should live here. That's exactly why ancient people liked it, Sarah said calmly. Seclusion protects secrets. Armand nodded, though his throat felt dry. Let's find those steps. They walked along the base of the western cliff for nearly an hour before Sarah suddenly froze. Look, half covered in dust and sand. A line of evenly spaced indentations rose along the rock face, weathered. Yes, but unmistakably carved by human. Steps. Armin felt a chill rise along his spine despite the heat. These are much older than anything I've studied, Sarah whispered with reverence. Older than your textbooks, Cameron said, kicking the ground nervously. Can we leave now? But Armin stepped forward, tracing the stone with trembling fingers. As a child, he had imagined this moment hundreds of times, yet nothing compared to the reality of touching something that defied explanation. The steps ended at a smooth stone wall halfway up the cliff. Beyond that, nothing. No platform, no entrance, no markings. Grandfather said they move, Armin murmured. Steps don't move, Sarah replied gently. Shadows do. Light does. But even she didn't sound convinced. Armand insisted, They camped near the site and observed the cliff from sunset to moonrise. Sarah agreed scientific curiosity was her weakness, and Cameron reluctantly followed, muttering about snakes and jinn hiding in desert corners. By dusk, the air cooled. Crickets emerged. The sky darkened into deep shades of blue and violet. Sarah set up her tripod, adjusting her lens toward the stone steps. If anything changes, the camera will catch it. Armin sat on a small boulder, staring at the cliff face as the moon slowly climbed into the night sky. A strange feeling pressed into his chesting instinct, or perhaps a warning as the moon reached its zenith. A thin beam of silver light touched the cliff, and the steps began to glow. Cameron gasped. No way. Sarah scrambled to focus her camera. This can't be real. The steps illuminated, one by one, like someone lighting lanterns along a dark corridor. Then the stone at the top, previously smooth, began to shimmer. The surface rippled, shifted, changed, and an archway appeared where none had existed before. An actual, physical archway, carved from the same stone, perfectly symmetrical, pulsing faintly with pale blue light. Armin's heart thundered. Grandfather wasn't lying. Day approached slowly, every crunch of gravel under their feet echoing across the silent valley. Cameron tugged Armin's sleeve. Bro, this feels wrong. But Armin couldn't stop. The archway pulled at him as though ancient hands were calling. The inside was pitch black, dark, and swallowed their flashlight beams. Sarah stepped beside him. I want to document this. If there's an inner chamber or a monster, Cameron whispered. Armin took a deep breath. We'll go in for 5 minutes. No more. Why 5? Cameron asked. Because that's all the courage I have right now. Sarah laughed nervously. Fair. And together, the three stepped into the darkness. The air grew cold instantly. Not desert night, cool cave cold. Wet, metallic, echoing. Their footsteps sounded deeper than they should have. As if the stone itself was hollow. The passage sloped downward. Symbols lined the walls, spirals, lines. In markings that seemed almost mathematical, Sarah photographed everything in rapid bursts. These aren't local. They're not even from the same cultural families we know. Cameron pointed to one marking, shaped like a circle, broken into 4 quadrants. What do you think it means? Armin swallowed. I think it's a direction. Direction to what? Before he could answer, the ground trembled. A pulse of blue light shot across the markings. Then another and another. The walls lit up like veins. Cameron dropped his flashlight. Okay, no. We're leaving. Now. But the passage began to shift. The floor rippled beneath their feet like soft clay. Sarah screamed as she slid forward, dragged by an invisible force. Armin grabbed her arm but slipped too, tumbling down the slope into a large chamber below. They landed hard on smooth stone. The chamber was enormous, hundreds of meters wide, with pillars carved like twisting vines reaching toward a domed ceiling. And in the center stood a large, circular stone platform. It hummed, actual vibration. Sarah's voice trembled. This is some kind of machine. Machine. Cameron choked. In a cave from thousands of years ago. Armin felt drawn toward the platform. With every step he took, the humming grew louder, not physically, but inside his mind. Something was calling him. A whisper, a memory, a name, Siraji. The chamber flickered with blue light as Armin stepped onto the platform. Everything went silent, completely silent. The air stilled, the hum vanished, and then, like a wave crashing against his consciousness, chamber erupted into light. Suddenly, he wasn't in Wadi Siraj anymore. He stood in the same chamber, but new, clean, alive people moved around him in robes of woven silver thread. They worked on the stone structures with tools made of glowing metal. Strange symbols floated in the air like holograms. Sarah and Cameron seemed unable to move, caught in the freeze frame of time. A tall figure approached Armin. At least he looked like one, but with eyes that held galaxies within them. "You returned," the figure said. Armin tried to speak, but no sound came out. "You carried the bloodline," the figure continued, touching the side of Armin's head gently. "Our memory lives through you." Images flashed rapidly. A thriving ancient civilization in the valley, machines carved into the mountains. A knowledge system far ahead of their era. A disaster, a collapse. A small group preserving their legacy underground, and, finally, a child being handed to desert tribes for protection. A promise that he or his descendants would one day return. Armin staggered as the vision ended. The chamber dimmed. Sarah regained movement, gasping for breath. Cameron fell to his knees, shaking. "What happened?" Sarah cried. Armin took a long, slow breath. "My grandfather wasn't just telling stories. Our ancestors belonged to the people who built this place." Sarah stared. "You mean?" "This is a remnant of an ancient, advanced civilization." Cameron raised his trembling hands. "Burwar, we descendants of cave aliens." Armin shot him a look. Not aliens, humans, but humans who knew more. Before Sarah could ask more, the chamber rumbled. Cracks spread across the floor. The entire structure began collapsing. "The moon's moving." Sarah shouted. "The cycle is ending. The doorway won't hold." They ran, tripping, sliding, scrambling up the shifting passage as the chamber cracked open behind them. The steps outside flickered. Their archways started sealing faster. Armin yelled. They leapt through the shrinking entrance. Just as the archway snapped shut like a mouth closing, the glowing steps faded. The cliff returned to normal, silent, lifeless, as though nothing had ever happened. Cameron collapsed on the sand. Ever again. Sarah was pale, breathless, but her eyes glowed with awe. Armin. This discovery could change history. Our man looked at the cliff. He could still feel the ancient hum inside his chest, calling him home. "No," he said softly. "Some truths aren't meant for the world yet." Sarah slowly nodded. Understanding. Cameron covered his face. "Good. Let the world stay normal." Armin turned away from the cliff, whispering to the wind. "I'll return when it calls again." And deep within the stone, for just a moment, a faint blue light pulsed back. I've done a lot of road trips in my life, but none of them compared to the night I truly believed I wouldn't make it home. This happened 3 years ago, and even now, when I think about it, my stomach tightens the same way it did that night. It all started on a quiet stretch of highway in western Colorado, a place so empty that sometimes, for miles, you don't see a single house, gas station, or even another driver. Back then, I actually liked that kind of silence. Now, I can't stand it. I was driving back to Denver after visiting a friend in a small mountain town. It was around 10:30 p.m. when I started my journey. The air was cold, the sky was clear, and the roads were nearly empty. I remember thinking the stars looked brighter than usual, like they were hanging low over the highway. The first 2 hours were peaceful. I had music playing, the heater running, and a cup of gas station coffee keeping me awake. It was shaping up to be an easy drive, but everything changed the moment I saw the van. It appeared behind me out of nowhere. Dull, silver-gray cargo van with no windows on the sides. Something about it immediately rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe it was the way it kept a perfect distance, neither closing the gap nor falling back. Maybe it was the fact that I hadn't noticed it approaching. It was just there suddenly, right in my mirror. I tried to ignore it at first. Highways are full of weird drivers. But after 10 minutes of it staying glued behind me, I decided to test something. I slowed down. The van slowed down. Then I sped up. The van sped up. My heart began beating harder. but I forced myself to stay calm. I told myself the driver was probably just distracted or maybe tired. Still, something felt wrong, deeply wrong. About 30 minutes later, I approached a long, dark stretch of road with winding turns and cliffs on one side. The van stayed close, too close, its headlights almost touching my rear bumper. A shiver ran through me. "Back off," I muttered, even though the driver couldn't hear me. I tapped my brakes lightly. Not enough to slow down much, but enough to send a message. The van responded by pulling even closer, almost aggressively. "What is your problem?" I whispered, my hands tightened on the wheel. That's when I noticed something strange in my mirror. The outline of the driver, or at least the silhouette. The person sat completely still, stiff, almost unnaturally upright. No movement, no shifting posture, like a mannequin behind the wheel. A thick wave of unease washed over me. I decided I needed to get away from this thing. I waited for a straight stretch of highway, then pressed the gas pedal hard. My car accelerated -70, 75, 80 k. The van followed, perfectly matching my speed every single mile. My throat tightened. It felt like the highway was shrinking, the night growing darker, as if the world around me was funneling into some trap. Finally, I saw something ahead, a rest area. It was small, barely lit, and looked abandoned, but I didn't care. I swung into the exit lane, hoping the van would continue straight. It didn't. It turned with me. That's when I felt real fear, pure, cold fear, run through my body. I pulled into the rest area and parked under the single flickering light. I kept my engine running. The van entered the rest area, parked far away, near the exit. It didn't pull up next to me. It didn't approach. It just sat there, angled slightly toward me, its headlights off. I stared at it, waiting for the driver to step out, but no one did. The van stayed still, like it was watching me. I grabbed my phone. No signal, of course. I breathed. The mountains always killed reception. I debated, honking, yelling, flashing my lights, something, but a voice in my head screamed, "Don't give them attention." After 3 minutes of terrifying silence, I made a decision. I slammed my car into reverse and sped out of the rest area, shooting back onto the highway at full speed. The van reacted instantly, pulling out and merging behind me. The next 20 minutes felt like a nightmare. I drove as fast as I safely could, my heart pounding, my breath shallow. Every turn, every straightaway, the van kept up, always the same distance, always silent, always watching. I tried to think of explanations. Is it a prank? Someone following? The wrong car? A drunk driver? A criminal? None of them made sense. Not with how precisely they matched my every move. Eventually, because of road construction, I had to detour onto a smaller 2-lane road. No lights, trees on both sides, nothing around for miles. When I slowed to take the turn, the van slowed too. When I accelerated again, so did it. My brain was screaming. This wasn't random. It wasn't a coincidence. This was intentional. I kept driving until I saw a broken down gas station. It's an old building with boarded up windows and a sign that barely hung from a rusted pole. For some reason, I turned into it, not to stop, just to test something. When I pulled into the cracked parking lot, the van didn't follow. It stayed on the road and kept going. I blinked in shock. It didn't stop. It didn't slow. It just disappeared into the darkness. I sat there, trembling, trying to understand what just happened. Was I finally safe? Did they give up? I let out a shaky breath, but then, not even a minute later, I saw something far down the road, under the faint moonlight. The van's brake lights flicked on, then it made a slow, wide U-turn, heading straight back toward me. A whisper escaped my mouth. No, 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 no. I threw my car into gear and shot back onto the road. At this point, I was shaking. My eyes were burning from staring at the mirror. Every instinct in my body screamed, Don't stop again. About 10 minutes later, I finally saw something ahead, a highway patrol station sign. It said, 3 miles. Just 3 more miles. I pushed the accelerator as far as I dared. The van stayed behind me. But then, something changed as I got closer to the highway patrol turnoff. The van suddenly slowed down, like it knew where I was going. It dropped further and further back, and eventually disappeared from view. I kept driving until I reached the patrol station. I didn't stop until I parked directly in front of the building. I ran inside. 2 officers listened to my story. They were calm, but I could tell by their expressions that this wasn't the first time someone had told them something like this. One officer said, "We've had reports of a van matching that description on these roads, but whenever we try to check it out, it's gone." I asked what they thought was happening. They exchanged a look. Then the older officer said something I'll never forget. "Some people, they don't chase you to catch you. They chase you to study you, to learn your habits, to see how you react." His words chilled me when they escorted me outside to check my car. The younger officer pointed at something on the back of my car. On my bumper was a small white sticker I'd never seen before. A circle with a symbol on it. A line crossed through the center like an unfinished X. The officer frowned. "We've seen this before. What does it mean?" I asked. He hesitated. "It usually means someone marked your car." "Marked it for what?" He didn't answer. I never saw the van again. No one ever followed me after that night. But about a month later, I found the same symbol drawn in dust on the rear window of my new car. That's when I realized some things don't end when the chase stops. Some things follow you long after the road looks empty. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.